So what is a volcanic eruption here? You know that on the earth's surface some kind of eruption takes place. Okay, and that what we call volcanoes. What is a volcano? It is a place. It is a place where we see the mountain material from the mantle erupts out. Okay, now look at this slide. It is the earth surface, and from this surface there mountain material from the mantle has erupted out with a high compressional force, and that what we call volcanoes. So volcanoes are the places on the earth's surface where molten material erupts out. Erupts means coming out of the mantle to the earth surface. That is called eruption. Okay. So this molten material erupts out from a place on the earth's surface, and it leads to the formation of volcanoes, and that what we call volcanic eruption. Okay, so here we find when eruption takes place, there the stream, that means boiled water, some smoke, and the material from the mantle erupts out. Okay, from the deep depth, what will come out? Many of the materials which are present at the mantle erupts out. Along with that, smoke also, ash, dust, all these erupts out and reaches to the higher places and falls down when it becomes cool. Okay, you know that the temperature is lower on the earth's surface when compared to the mantle. There is a high temperature at the mantle. So hot molten material, when it erupts out due to the low temperature on earth's surface, it becomes cool and forms a solid rock, that what we call igneous rocks. What we call igneous rocks. Instead, sometimes when the compressional force from the mantle is not too much, okay, it erupts out. Okay, instead of coming with a high force, it slowly erupts and flows on the earth's surface instead, and that leads to the formation of lava plateaus. What that? Lava plateaus instead. So here we find two kinds of what to call it, changes in the lithosphere. One is first one is very slow movement. Okay, the slow movement on the earth crust leading to the formation of the new crust. Okay, and movement of the continental plates, and that their eventual return into the mantle. Okay, so there are two movements. The sudden movement, slow movement may form crust part. Okay, and sudden movement very destructive, it causes much damages instant. Earthquakes are with the sudden changes. Okay, the formation of sea floor is the slow movement instant. So there are slow movement and sudden movements instant. So the slow movement and sudden movement also brings changes on the lithosphere. Okay, look at here. What do you see? There are intrusive landforms and extrusive landforms. So what is meant by intrusive landforms? Landforms formed under the crust. It is not above the surface, below the earth surface. It means that it is under the surface. Look at here. This is the earth surface, my dear students. What I am writing here. Surface of the earth. Okay. So some kind of landforms are formed under the earth surface. Okay, those are called intrusive landforms. What are called? Intrusive landforms. Understand? And some landforms are formed above the earth surface, on the surface of the earth, and these are called extrusive landforms. What we call? Extrusive landforms. Okay, see, some part of lava, while coming out from the mantle, it may not reach to the earth surface. What I am showing here, it is a mantle. Okay, so how is a mantle? The mantle consists of molten material, right? And that is very hot here. So this molten material, when it tries to come out, some lava, some molten material may not come to the earth surface. Okay, and that may not reach the earth surface, may become cool under the earth surface here. Okay, here it becomes cool. What I am showing here, it becomes cool. Understand? Where it is becoming cool? Below the earth surface. Understand? As it becomes cool, it turns to rocks. What? Rocks. Understand? That is, these are the rocks formed inside the surface. That means below the earth surface. So as these rocks are inside the earth surface, these are called intrusive landforms. What are called? Intrusive landforms. Understand? And these are usually covered with older rocks. Sometimes they are exposed, sometimes due to erosion they may come out also. So what is erosion? We will discuss here. Okay, and a part of the lava which comes out of the, which comes to the earth surface, forms the water extrusive landforms. Okay, here you see that these are rocks formed on the earth surface, and these are called extrusive landforms. So what we see here, two types of landforms are there: extrusive landforms, intrusive landforms. Intrusive landforms are those which are formed inside the earth surface. Okay, and extrusive landforms are formed above the earth surface. Those are called extrusive landforms. Now look at this slide. What do you see here? There are two types of igneous rocks are shown in this slide. So one is example for intrusive landforms, and another one is example for extrusive landforms. Look at this. Okay, what do you see here? It is extrusive landform. Okay, fine grained rock that cools quickly on earth's surface. These are called extrusive landforms. Okay, which one? This is extrusive landforms. And another one is this intrusive landforms. Okay, so in this way, igneous rocks are classified into extrusive and intrusive landforms. Okay, these are the water two types of, these are the two types of landforms we see. Okay, extrusive landforms, intrusive landforms, right? Then next is that there are some important volcanoes in the world. Okay, Here you see that what are the important volcanoes in the world. Stromboli, it is a volcanic it is a volcano we find in Sicily. Sicily is a country in the Mediterranean Sea, right? And next is Mount Plee. Which one? Mount Plee. This. And it is at West Indies. Then Mount Vesuvius. Mount Vesuvius. It is in Italy. Fusiyama. It is the name of volcano and it is at Japan. Cotopaxi. It is at Ecuador. This is in South America. Cotopaxi is a volcano. It is at Ecuador. Ecuador is a country in South America. Next, Mayan. This is located at Philippines. Where do we find this? In Philippines instance. So these all are some important volcanoes present in the world. In India too, we find volcanoes. Okay, those are barren. Barren is a volcano we find in India. That means at Andaman Nicobar Islands, we find these volcanoes, Barren and Narcondam. Narcondam also one volcano we find at Andaman Nicobar Islands. Next is Kilimanjaro. It is a volcano we find at Tanzania. Tanzania is in Africa. It is an African country. There we find Kilimanjaro. So all these are important volcanoes we find in the world. Okay. And all these volcanoes are at the plate boundaries. Understand? What is mean by plate boundaries? Between one plate and another plate, where a plate touches with another plate. That is called plate boundary. Okay. So at the plate boundaries, we find all these important volcanoes. Understand? Dear students, look at this slide. What do you see here? It is the world shown in a way that South America, North America shown towards east, and Australia, Asia, Europe shown at west, right? So what is this ocean? It is a Pacific Ocean. Dear students, it is a Pacific Ocean. Okay, Pacific Ocean. Understand? So here it is South America, North America, then it is Asia, and it is Australia. So here it is the Pacific Ocean lying on a Pacific plate, right? So this Pacific plate boundary is connected with the Eurasian plate here, North American plate, and South American plate, right? So here along the plate boundary of a Pacific plate, we find many volcanoes. Every time these volcanoes erupt there, so that it is called Pacific Ring of Fire. Which is called Pacific Ring of Fire? In the Pacific Ocean, we find many volcanoes. Okay, due to the presence of many volcanoes at the Pacific Ocean, it is called Pacific Ring of Fire. Nearly 3 by 4th, okay, 3/4 of volcanoes, that is active volcanoes. All the active volcanoes of the world we find in the Pacific Ocean. Okay, and 1/4 of the volcanoes are present in the rest of the world. So maximum volcanoes we find at the Pacific Ocean, so that it is called Pacific ring of fire. So why do we call it a Pacific ring of fire? Due to the presence of many volcanoes at the Pacific plate boundary, so that it is called Pacific ring of fire. Understand? So this is about the Pacific ring of fire. Understand? Let us see that external process. Okay, what are the landforms forming with the external process? Understand? Look at here. See what I shown here. The edge of the Pacific Ocean basin. How many volcanoes are there? 3 by 4th. Okay, 3 and 4th of the active volcanoes of the world will situated in the Pacific Ocean. Okay. Next, the processes in the formation of third order of landforms. See, we have seen that first order of landforms are formed by the formation of earth, right? And second order of landforms by the internal process. Now, third order of landforms we identified what are called third order of landforms, right? But how they form, that we are discussing now. Understand? So here there are certain stages in the formation of a third order of landforms, and those stages are given here. Look at this slide. What are those stages? Weathering, first one. Second is erosion. Third is transportation. And fourth is deposition. By all these four stages, we see the formation of new landforms, which are called third order of landforms. And this process of weathering, erosion, transportation, and deposition is called denudation process. What is meant by denudation process? Weathering, erosion, transportation, and deposition, collectively called denudation process. And this process is a continuous process. Which process? Denudation. It means that at every moment we find weathering, erosion, transportation, and deposition. At every moment in the sense what? At every time. Okay, always, in all the seasons. It is in the day and night. Okay, and year by year, month by year, at every time we see the process of denudation goes on, so that it is called continuous process. Which one? Denudation. And what are the stages in the denudation process? There are four stages in the denudation process. Instead, it is weathering, erosion, transportation, and deposition. Okay, here certain lowlands what we see today were once mountains and plateaus. Okay, and they are slowly changed by the denudation. Okay, and this process we called erosion cycle also. Okay, the denudation process is also called erosion cycle or geomorphic cycle. Geo means it is the earth, morphic means changes. So the existing landforms on the earth's surface are changed by a process, and so that process what we call geomorphic cycle. Look at here. What do you see? It is a mountain. What I drawn here? A mountain. Instead, and this mountain is weathered out, then erosioned, transported, and deposited. Continuously, the wind and water, that is rain, falling on the mountain will go on working on it. Some kind of friction takes place on the mountain. So the shape of this mountain gradually decreases into another shape, that what we call plateau. Now you see that here how what happened, a mountain changed to what? Plateau. A mountain changes to plateau. Understand? So here the change happen in the shape of the mountain to the plateaus. Okay, and how it happened? By the denudation process instead, or what you call geomorphic circle. Okay, by the geomorphic circle, the mountain converted into the plateau instead. So we find here denudation process. Okay, in the denudation process, two are important things. One is water, another is wind. Okay, water and wind are called natural agents. These natural agents work on the earth's surface on the existing landforms, that is mountains, valleys, plains, river valleys. On that, these water and wind works out with a process called denudation and brings changes in the existing landforms. Okay, so in this way, third order of landforms are going to be formed instead. So what are those processes? It is we see here. Okay, wind, water, and wind. These are natural agents. We call them constructive and destructive forces. See, a mountain is destructed and formed into plateau. So mountain is destructed so that water and wind is called destructive forces. The mountain destructed and formed to plateaus, and plateaus are formed to plains. Plains are deposited with the silt brought by water and wind, so they converted into plateaus. River valleys are converted into plains or plateaus. Okay, so some new kind of construction of landforms are taking place by the wind and water. So water and wind are called constructive and destructive forces. They bring change on the existing landforms. Okay, so the present landforms are going to be changed, and it takes some hundreds of years. Don't expect that it may bring change in 1 day or 2 day. Okay, right? It takes much more time. Do you know, today the Himalayan mountains are the highest mountain ranges, right? But before to the Himalayan mountain ranges, do you know that Aravalli mountains are there? Okay, which are at great height. Today, those are turned to lower height instead. So, what made Aravalli ranges to a smaller in height? It is by wind and water. Okay, today we see that many valleys, those are once upon a time mountains, they turn to valleys. And today we see that some kind of mountains, and that may be the plat. So what we see here, water and wind works on the earth's surface and makes the surface to be level one. So the leveling of the surface by wind and water on the earth's surface is called external processes.